How I got close to my best friend's mom and ruined everything. I stepped off the train, my uniform slightly rumpled, but still carrying the weight of months spent in basic training. The smell of my hometown hit me immediately, a mix of fresh grass, asphalt, and something inherently familiar that made my chest tighten. It had been 12 weeks of discipline, early mornings, harsh commands, and exhaustion that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. I had changed in ways subtle and deep, and I felt the difference in every movement, every glance, every thought. Yet the streets of my hometown had not. They were still lined with the same old buildings, the same shop fronts, the same faces waiting somewhere beyond the train station. Mom was the first to see me. Her face lit up instantly, tears brimming in her eyes. She ran forward, wrapping me in an embrace so fierce I felt both comforted and smothered at once. "Daniel! My boy!" she cried. I hugged her back, feeling the weight of her longing, the years I'd been gone pressing against me. Dad stood a little back, quiet as ever, but his eyes shone with pride that made my chest swell. He didn't need words. I barely had time to take in the crowd in the living room before familiar voices erupted. Friends, neighbors, classmates, all faces I hadn't seen in months, smiling, laughing, making me feel both awkward and celebrated. Tyler, my best friend since childhood, was there. He looked almost the same, skinny and slightly hunched, as if life hadn't yet shaped him like it had me. "You've changed, man," Tyler said, eyeing my frame and my uniform. "The Army's done a number on you." "Mostly made me hungry," I joked, though my muscles ached in ways that reminded me the changes weren't just for show. He laughed, clapping me on the shoulder, and for a moment the past and present collided in a confusing but comforting way. There were familiar faces from school too, and the subtle hints of flirtation reminded me of a time when I worried about trivial things. But amidst all the laughter and lighthearted chatter, I saw her, Evelyn Carter, Tyler's mother. I hadn't thought about her in months, but her presence hit me harder than I expected. There was a quiet elegance to her that drew my eyes and kept them there. She wore a green dress, modest yet captivating, and carried herself with a calm grace that made everything else in the room fade. "Daniel," she said warmly as she approached. Her voice was smooth, steady, the kind that lingered. "You've grown into yourself. The Army suits you." "Thank you," I said, trying to mask the sudden tension I felt. She smiled at me, a faint curve of her lips that made my stomach twist. I shook my head and looked away, forcing myself to focus on Tyler, who was elbowing me playfully. Later, the party buzzed with energy. Drinks were poured, music played softly in the background, and I moved through groups of people, reconnecting, laughing, feeling the strain of social interaction after weeks of strict military routine. Tyler and I eventually retreated upstairs to drop our bags, talking about the smallest details, who had gained weight, who was still with whom. But underneath it all, a subtle tension remained. He nudged me to keep the uniform on, joking about how some of the girls weren't the only ones noticing. That night, after the party had thinned and Tyler had stepped out for a quick errand, I found myself in the kitchen alone with Evelyn. The room felt different, smaller, and the hum of distant conversation made the silence between us heavier. She was organizing glasses, moving with an ease I remembered from summers past, and I leaned against the counter, uncertain, aware of the shift in the air. "You've changed," she said softly, almost to herself. Her eyes didn't meet mine immediately, and I felt the weight of her observation pressing in. "I suppose I have," I admitted. Her gaze finally met mine, steady and searching. "And yet some things never do. You always had this way of standing apart, watching, thinking, even then, when you were just a boy." Her words tugged at memories I hadn't revisited in years. The summers spent helping at their pool, the quiet afternoons when she guided me through small tasks, the subtle kindness that made me feel important, seen. I realized suddenly that those days had shaped a part of me in ways I hadn't understood until now. The tension between us was unspoken but palpable. Her hand brushed mine accidentally, and the spark it sent through me was impossible to ignore. Both of us paused, aware of the shift but neither speaking. There was an invisible line we were dancing around, and crossing it would be irreversible. Outside, Tyler laughed in the yard, oblivious, and the sound made the moment feel all the more fragile. We spoke carefully after that, each word layered with meaning and restraint. I could sense her awareness of boundaries, her recognition of the impossibility of what we were feeling, yet the quiet longing persisted. Every glance, every subtle gesture carried weight, every smile was heavy with implication. That night, sleep was elusive. My mind replayed the army drills, the early mornings, the long runs that had honed my body and mind. I remembered the discipline, the physical exhaustion, the mental strain, and realized it had given me a patience and endurance that now applied to these emotional trials. I had learned to hold myself, to restrain impulses, and now those lessons were being tested in the quiet moments of desire and restraint with her. The following days were filled with small, careful interactions. Each visit to her home was measured, helping with chores, sharing meals, casual conversation. But beneath it all simmered a tension we neither could name nor act upon. Every encounter tested my self-control, my ability to navigate the treacherous waters of attraction, memory, and moral boundaries. And yet, within the restraint, there was an intimacy, a connection that could not be ignored. Tyler came and went, and I maintained the facade of casual friendship. But the moments with Evelyn were charged with unspoken meaning. Each touch, each shared look, each laugh held a subtext we never vocalized. The air was thick with what we were not saying, with desires and regrets and moral choices that weighed heavily on both of us. One evening, in the quiet of the house, we found ourselves alone again. We spoke candidly for the first time, acknowledging the line we had skirted but never crossed. "Daniel," she said softly, voice trembling, "we can't keep doing this." I nodded, the weight of her words settling deep into my chest. "I know, but I also know I won't forget this. Or you." Her hand found mine, giving a gentle squeeze that spoke volumes. "I understand, and I forgive you for what you cannot help feeling. But we have to live our separate lives." The finality of her words hit me harder than I anticipated. I swallowed hard, feeling a pang of loss and longing. "I'll remember everything. Always," she smiled, a luminous, melancholy smile. "And I'll remember you. You've taught me something too. Patience, honesty with oneself, the courage to see the truth even when it hurts." We parted that night with an unspoken understanding, the bittersweet weight of shared history lingering. The years that followed were filled with memory of homecomings, of temptation, of restraint, and the quiet ache of what could never fully be. I saw Tyler now and then, grown, happy, unaware of the unspoken tension that had passed between us. And sometimes a faint scent, a fleeting gesture, would remind me of Evelyn, stirring old memories of longing, guilt, and the unresolvable ache of choices made too early, too young. That homecoming changed me irrevocably. It taught me the limits of desire, the importance of restraint, and the bittersweet weight of love and longing that could never find a proper place. And in that ache, I discovered a part of myself that would always remain, capable of profound respect, deep remembrance, and a kind of love that could survive in memory, even when it could not exist in reality. The memory of her lingered in small, persistent ways. A glance in a crowded room, a certain posture, a laugh that echoed a moment long past. And every time, I felt the tug of what might have been, tempered by the knowledge that some things are meant only for memory, not for life. Even years later, the lessons of that summer, of that return remained. I had learned the complexity of human desire, the weight of moral choices, and the enduring power of subtle, unspoken connection. And as I look back, I could see that those few weeks had shaped me more than any drill, any command, any lesson in the Army ever could. The homecoming had become a defining moment. Bittersweet, impossible, unforgettable.